Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me? We shall see. Can you hear me? It seems like you can probably hear me. Yeah, you can hear me. We're just gonna go ahead and announce it on the Instagram that we are currently live because we're live and we want to make sure everyone that wants to be here for the stream can make it over. So we're just gonna go ahead, take a second, let everyone on Instagram know that we're officially live. Then I guarantee. Well, I have some chat-ums to share with you guys. Then we can get into the streamy stream. Okay. So let me start off with saying, like, I don't look as bad as I thought it would, which is great. Love that. But I will say, if you have been following me on Instagram, you already know. But I have been on this medication for the past almost a week, and it's been killing me. Today's my last day, so hopefully tomorrow I should be able to regain some semblance of a will to live. But for right now, I'm not feeling too hot. Still wanted to get the stream out because we want to do it on Wednesdays. We love doing it on Wednesdays. We also, I did finish the book Monday, and I didn't want to have to wait a week to do the stream. I feel then that I would be obligated to wait a week to even start reading the next book, so that way all of the things that I just read and all the things I was thinking are still super fresh in my mind for you guys, so we can have this discussion. So we wanted to go ahead and do the stream. I don't look like a 10 out of 10 today. That's fine. It happens. But I looked decently. I look decently cute. It's fine. But what's more important is that we're going to be able to actually go over everything that we need to talk about for this book. And hopefully there aren't going to be too many interruptions from cats. But cats have been kind of wild today. But that's okay. So let's get into, I read for this stream, I read the third book in the Critical Failure series. I'm not sure if, I believe Caverns and Creatures is the overall, all of the books title, and then this is a sub-series, Critical Failures. I believe that's how it breaks down. So we read Critical Failures book 3, and if you didn't see the other two streams, I would suggest we can discuss this one too, but you should check those out as well. Those I actually did on my No Ordinary Scholar channel, the main channel, because that's where I used to do all my streams. But so basic rundown of what happened was you had this group of guys. They wanted to have a little Caverns and Creatures game session, which Caverns and Creatures is essentially just Dungeons and Dragons. And they found this guy online that was willing to be their dungeon master. They bully him, and it turns out this guy has some magic dice that sends them into the game world. And so they're sent into the game world. They become the characters that they had created. And now they're fighting for their lives and fighting to find a way out. They run into some other people he sent into the world. And they end up making their way out of the game world. But unfortunately, at the very end of book 2, we find that when they come out of the game world, they are still those same characters. And it's because the person that did the spell to send them back to the real world was an in-game character, and the spell he used did not have any sort of, like, it had transportation, but it didn't have any transformation aspects to it. So he just brought them over as their character selves. So let's go over probably the most important thing to know before we actually get into the plot is taking a second to go over who all of the characters are, because we actually have a decent number of characters in this book. So you have Tim. He is one of the main characters, one of those initial characters that we meet at the very beginning of the book. He is a half-elf, which is like he's about 3 feet tall. So you have him, and he's very moody. He's very moody, very grumpy. So you have Tim. Cooper is a half-orc, which is he's half human and half beastly creature. Because of the way he set up his character design before they got sent into the real world, before they got sent into the game world, because of how he set up his character, he is quite stupid, and he's also very disgusting. Like, barely can control his bowels. Disgusting kind of character. So that's Cooper. Dave is the healer. Julian is a wizard with, I believe, 1 level in sorcery. And he has his own little animal companion that's a raven. The bird's name is Ravenous. And so Julian, again, wizardy type. Next, you have Catherine, Tim's sister. She and her boyfriend, we're not 100% sure on it, they just ran into Mordred, and the guys were gone in the first book. They ran into Mordred, and her brother and everyone else was gone. So they were going to call the police, but Mordred ended up tricking them into throwing the dice, so they got sent to the game. So you have Catherine, who is the sister. At this point in time, she has been turned into a vampire. And vampires, we'll talk about this, vampires in this book are so overpowered, it's ridiculous. But she is a vampire. Chaz, the boyfriend, he is a human, he is a bard. A bard is essentially just a musician, storyteller. And that's really all you need to know. Goosewaddle, who's Precious character. And this is a thing that you brought in to this book to kind of flip the scenario, because in the first 2 books you have them in the game world, and you have these people who are not familiar with the game that you regularly have to explain it to. And when you flip them and they put them in the real world, you have this character, Goosewaddle, who is the person, the in-game character, the person that's not technically supposed to be a real human. Well, he's not human, but not supposed to be real, who is brought over into the human world, our world. And you have to explain cars to him. You have to explain cell phones to him. And so he is the reverse of those people who were first-time players of the game when they got sent into the game world. He's absolutely precious. He's adorable. He accidentally causes a lot of property destruction because he just wants to play with things and figure out how they work. So you have Goosewaddle. Stacy is a new character. And aside from... Let's get into the new characters later. The other groups, there are 2 other kind of characters that I'm going to discuss. You have Mordred, who is the guy that sends everyone into the game world. I believe I told you guys this, there was supposed to be this whole idea that he had died, but when they come back into the real world, they come back and he has yet to die. So they go and he accidentally release him. He escapes, and now they're trying to hunt him down so that way they can get back to normal. But you have Mordred, and that's who he is. He is the controller of the dice. He is the cavern master. And then you have the Horsemen, which are this group of middle schoolers that Mordred sent into the game as a reward because they just admired him so much and they loved this game so much. So he sent them into the game as a reward, and these guys are complete assholes. And that's basically what happened. That's basically all you need to know about the Horsemen. New characters. Stacy is a doctor that they bring along in the adventure. They have to go. Cooper gets poisoned, and so they go to her place of work to get a form of cure for him. And because she has then seen a lot of magical things, they can't have her running around telling police, so she has to come with them. Randy and Dennis are the other 2 main new characters, and we're going to talk more about them. But Randy is a convicted pedophile They were looking to find a van that didn't have windows so they could stuff all of these otherworldly creatures in the car when they're traveling, but also they needed something to feed their vampire sister. So they wanted to go, who would miss a pedophile? So they took the van from Randy, and now he's kind of a part of this whole thing, and now he's a part of the whole group because he can't go back. Tim in his halfling 3-foot form looks like a child, and he doesn't want to go to jail for having this almost child near him. So he doesn't know what to do now. And then you have Dennis is a police officer. He is the one that sees Randy with this 3-foot child and is like, hey, I'll put you in jail for having this kid near you. You're not supposed to have kids near you. Or Dennis says he'll leave Randy alone if Randy lets him have sex with Tim, who looks like a child. And so, again, obviously Tim is small, but he is a grown man. And he also is still armed with a lot of the things he's had from the game world. So he ends up subduing Dennis, putting him in the back of the van, and accidentally ends up he threatens to cut Dennis's testicles off. He threatens to cut Dennis's testicles off. They hit a pothole and he accidentally does do this. And now Dennis is at a point where someone has made a comment that if he just does what they say, they can magically find some way to give him his testicles back. And after hearing that, he's super on board with absolutely everything they have to do. So those are the new characters. Let's backtrack and go into just the plot of this story real quick. So again, we have these main characters. They are back in the real human world, but they are in their character forms. So they're now trying to go after and capture Mordred, who has done this to them, so that way they can try and, be normal again. But Mordred thinks they're going to kill him. He doesn't want to do that. And B, he's also very confused as to how they got back, because he thought that he was the only one who's supposed to be able to even do that. Which I have my theories on this. I have theories that this game world might be less of an actual figment of just Mordred's magic and the person that actually wrote these books, because we actually do get a lot of references to the person who actually wrote the Caverns and Creatures manuals, books, stuff like that. So I'm starting to get the feeling that the person that wrote the books was actually writing about a real world that they had been to, almost similar to, if you guys have seen The Magicians. If you've seen the show, I'm sure at least this element of it is similar in the books. You have this author who writes about this world, Fillory, but turns out Fillory is real. You can get there. This person actually was there. The people that they wrote about are actual pieces of Fillorian history. And so I'm getting that kind of same feeling there. But again, Mordred's confused as to how they got out. He thought this was only a power he had. And so Mordred ends up saying, hey, if they can do it, I can do it too. He kidnaps Stacy because he's terrible. And he threatens to bring the Horsemen back, those 4 middle schoolers who are complete assholes. He threatens he's going to level them up to an insane amount of strength and then bring them back to the real world so they can essentially just take over Earth. But when he does do this, when he does try and bring them back, he accidentally brings them back as the children that they were when they went in, and they have no memory of the game of anything. So now we just have these kids that have shown up. And I do feel like this is something that was lacking. I feel like we spent so much time building up the fact that the 4 horsemen were building up so much strength, they were going to dominate the world, but we got none of that conflict. like they've been getting to the point where they can just materialize a palace in a day. I would have loved to see that kind of power come into some form of flourishing. But instead, we just get this scene where they just appear back in the real world as kids, which it's also upsetting because now everyone's back in the game world. I guess they're just going to steal all the Horsemen stuff, which instead of not even being able to fight them there. But that's one of the smaller things, one of the few things that actually had issues. I felt like that storyline with the Horsemen did not have a good ending, did not have a very satisfactory conclusion. They just kind of reappear as children again. No memories of anything that's been going on. And that's that. These major villains of the whole series, gone now. But anyway, he brings them back as children. So he accidentally falls out of a penthouse window. Everyone thinks he's about to die. Last minute, he throws a dice and sends himself into the game world. The group take whatever dice he leaves behind and they try to use that to be able to fix themselves, turn themselves back into humans, whether or not that's going to mean like losing their memory. One person is fine with that. The others are willing to go and figure out a way to get Stacy back because she's still been kidnapped and sent to the game world. But they can't figure the dice out themselves, and it turns out that because they are not the controllers of the dice, Mordred is. Mordred is the only person that can actually command them to do anything aside from his normal command of you can just, if someone throws the dice, then they end up in the game world. So everyone, since we don't have any way of getting them back to their normal bodies, everyone decides we're going to go into the game world, we're going to find Mordred, and we're going to end this. Let me just say, dumb idea. I don't think that's a good idea. I'm sure Mordred is like a level 500. I don't think that's going to turn out well for them. But you know, Tim and Stacy have a little thing going on. So let them be happy. I'm not a hater. Let them be happy. But that's basically what the story goes on. Let's talk about vampires in this book, because the vampires in this book are so overpowered, it's ridiculous. Their powers include, obviously, they can shapeshift into anything, because why not? We actually see this character, she shapeshifts into wolves, and there's also, the main reason why we get a lot of this is because in one of the previous books, they give this little robber guy to the vampire sister to eat because she hasn't eaten anything. And she accidentally doesn't kill him. She just turns him into another vampire. And at some point, he's just hungry. He escapes, and now we have to try and find them, or there's just going to be a vampire loose on Earth. So we see them. They can transform into basically any creature they see. They transform into giant wolves, into regular-sized wolves, into small bats, into giant 10-foot bats. They can transform into anything they want. They can also control a person. Ooh, lighting then changed. They can also control a person by using a certain tone of voice. They can dominate a person, and now this person just does whatever they say. And that becomes very apparent and very useful when they're trying to find Mordred and they figure out that he's not snuck into, but he's hiding in this hotel. The person of the group that's already been there is like, oh no, the hotel staff's not going to tell me anything. Vampire sister just goes over to them and is like, hey, tell me everything I want to know. Sure. And so they can, again, just control anyone they want. Parkour skills on point. She scales walls like no other. Super strength. And they also have this ability where when you do something that would theoretically kill them, they kind of just explode into little like blobs of blood, and then those blobs of blood can then just float around through the air and reform into their full vampire selves. It's really difficult to kill the vampires in this book. Like, light and holy water. That's basically it. So we have that. Again, vampires in this book. Absolutely overrated. She drives this plot so hard with her vampire skills. It's crazy. But yeah, so that's that. And let's talk about some things that when I was reading through the Goodreads reviews of this book, let's talk about some of the things that people didn't like. Number one being juvenile humor. Yes, there's a lot of juvenile humor in this book. There are constant, like, poop jokes. There's like, I know that there's so much juvenile humor. It doesn't bother me at all. I read this and I don't think that this is necessarily humor. These are jokes that the author's throwing for my benefit. I might have said this before, but I'll read these juvenile jokes and that all I'm seeing is, okay, this is the character. This is how the character deals with these types of situations. This is the way the character talks, thinks, makes jokes. This is them. As opposed to thinking that the author thinks I'll laugh at all these potty jokes, if that makes sense. I don't think that, and I could be wrong, but I don't think that the juvenile humor is there because it's supposed to be stand up. This author thinks that if he did a stand-up routine with these jokes, he'd kill it. I don't think so. I think this is just the group of characters. This is how they behave. And so obviously that's not going to change in I think they themselves have felt like they've been living for a month or so in this game world and all of this situation. The events of the book that I just read, book 3, I think that takes place in 24 hours. It's not a lot of time to completely change a person's coping skills, a person's just sense of humor, style, especially when you have one of them who is actually supposed to be stupid and probably is, and it's supposed to be meant to appeal to those kinds of jokes because they're supposed to be stupid. He gave himself an extremely low intelligence score when he was making up a character sheet. So yeah, I don't mind the juvenile humor. I also don't mind the cussing. I've said it before in one of the previous books, the gay jokes got really irritating, but I don't recall many in this book. That I don't recall. There are definitely homophobic things that they say, but they say it, the way it's portrayed is more of, this is a character. Because in this book, I get the feeling that we are in the real world, and I get the feeling that they're trying to portray the area as being one that's super racist, being one that's super homophobic. And so when I see someone say something homophobic in the book, it doesn't feel like it's supposed to be a joke. It doesn't feel like it's supposed to be just a means of conversation. It feels like that is part of what the society that we're actually looking at is. It feels like we're just in an area that unfortunately is very racist, very homophobic. And that goes into the next thing that a lot of people that didn't like the book said that they didn't like. They didn't like Dennis and Randy. And the main concern seems to be that Dennis and Randy just kind of joined the group, and that bothered people. From my read through of it, of the two, I'm the most disgusted with Dennis, of course. Dennis was the one that actually tried to rape Tim, who he thought was a child. And he's the police officer, correct? So, from my read through, it felt like no one necessarily cared about Dennis at all. Dennis was very whiny. He was always, especially because almost right after he got his testicles cut off, and he was always crying about that. And anytime I did appreciate that anytime he would say something like, why are you so mean to me? Why'd you get my balls off? Tim would say, you tried to rape me. When are you going to let that go? That was this morning. But yeah, I felt like Dennis got quite a good serving of justice by having his testicles cut off. And then after we get to a point where he's a prisoner for a while. He's basically a prisoner for a while. And then we get to a point where Chaz kind of says, after he catches them while they were trying to escape, he essentially tells Dennis, if you just listen to us, we can get you some magic to grow your balls back. And at that point, Dennis is their dog. Dennis is their pet. Dennis is their henchman. Dennis is subservient to them because he just wants his testicles back. But I wouldn't say that necessarily these people like Dennis, but he 100% just obeys the group, and the group, because they're trying not to have to deal with having the entire police department on their ass because they cut off one officer's testicles, they have to keep him around, and they have to keep him from calling someone, from reporting them, especially because they do end up bringing him back to their restaurant. They need to make sure he's not going to rat. So I wouldn't say he kind of joins the group. He stays with them, but he's definitely on a different dynamic than like the sister or Chaz or the main four. He's on a different dynamic for sure. Randy. And I'm on the fence with this because honestly, Randy's character doesn't really do much. He's kind of just there. He gets to a point where they had used some magic to charm him into giving them the van and coming with them. And when that magic faded, now he's like, crap, I have charges against me, and there's this guy that looks like a child in my car. I'm fucked. So he just goes along with it because he doesn't want to go to jail for this, especially because he couldn't control himself. It was magic. But he doesn't have anything to say. He doesn't have any response to give them. And they also don't want to let him go because they don't want him to report his van is stolen. So you have that situation with Randy. And that's really, so he kind of participates. He buys everyone snacks because he was the only one that had money. And he just kind of goes with the flow because he doesn't have any other options. But I wouldn't say, again, I do think he's not necessarily subservient like Dennis, but he's also not buddy-buddy with everyone like the rest of the group is. But even still, a lot of people, I think, are very upset because he's a pedophile and now he's kind of in the adventure. And for me, I feel like I would need way more information on his actual case. Because a thing they bring up is that it seems like he's only had one situation, only one instance in which he was accused, convicted, anything of pedophilia. And he keeps saying that the person that he ended up getting convicted for, the other person in the situation, the minor, had an ID. It was a young boy. But he said that person had an ID. And he constantly says that. And that's the only situation that's ever referenced for Randy. So I feel, based on this, and based on the fact that they keep bringing this one thing up, this one case up that they had, they could have simply just said, hey, like just given him a couple cases, anything like that. But they only gave him one instance of this. He keeps saying he had an ID. And the fact that it was a boy, it was two men, tells me that there's honestly a good chance with the society that is created for this book. It honestly, I would not be in disbelief if you told me that he was convicted just because it was a homophobic act, because that's the kind of area that we're in. So I don't necessarily, again, I don't have a lot of information if he did rape a kid. Fuck Randy. But based on what little information we are given, it's highly possible that it was a mistake, not necessarily from his within his knowledge, within the knowledge he could have. And it was mostly tried and convicted because it was homosexual. Because again, people in this book seem to be very racist and very homophobic. So that's my take on what a lot of people tend to have issues with when I was reading through the Goodreads reviews of this book. Those are the main things that people tend to have issues with. And so I just want to talk about that for a little bit. But yeah, we've hit our time mark. And I didn't have anything else to say. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, for moving with me to the vlog channel. And yeah, I'll let you know. I know I was late to let you know about the book last week. I promise by the end of tomorrow, I'll have a book and I'll have it decided. I'm not sure what I want to do yet. I was thinking of reading Brave New World, but because you have this new Peacock show that comes out, right? But I thought the book was going to be in the public domain, which it is not. And then I would also think it'd be nice to do a vlog or a video, something, comparing the book and the Peacock show, but that's a lot of money, and this girl's broke. So we might look into something else. If you like that idea of going over Brave New World and then comparing the TV show, the Peacock TV show, and the book, we can always try that. We can definitely do that, and you can help support that idea over at my Patreon, patreon.com/bbon2343. Look up No Ordinary Scholar over there. It'll be nice. You can support me, get a bunch of different perks. You would probably get that comparison video, get to see that before anyone else is. So just if that sounds nice to you, go ahead and check me out on Patreon. But for right now, we're still thinking on a book. I'll let you guys know. But until next time, valedictions, friends.